Hello and welcome to a Calyptix Security webinar. This one's a little bit different than what we usually have done. Mostly it's been a Calyptix-centric one, but we're trying to do a more generalized webinar. And so today we have Andrew Baker and Duane Pettis, and we're going to be doing a high-level overview of like cybersecurity in general. And so we're going to go over many different aspects of what plagues small businesses and what we see of different ways that we can overcome that and find out different ways to mitigate those kinds of things. A lot of these things would be things that you already know, and some things you probably don't usually do in your regular day-to-day. With that, I'll just introduce Calyptix Security. We are an international firewall manufacturer with partners that have been with us for over 10 years. We're going strong and growing. We are a low-cost, high-value solution for small and medium business without sacrificing security, which is our first priority. Now, I'm Joseph Schmidt. I'll be hosting this webinar, and it'll be more of a conversation with experiences and best practices.
This is Duane Pettis calling. Just wanted to let you guys know. Right now, presently, we're trying to having some difficulties getting Andrew on the line, so that's what we're waiting for right now. But I can introduce myself. I am Duane Pettis, Director of Service Support, which you will see a little bit later on. Pretty much most of you, if you are part of the Calyptix family, have talked to me from time and time again, trying our best to make sure that you guys have the best security, the best experience with us as we go on with our product. As Joseph said, our universal threat management device that we have is basically geared towards protecting you, or protecting your clients, I should say, from threats all throughout. We have different facets of our product, but the one that we're going to focus on right now is basically the top security threats that we have facing all of us, I should say, and how to spot them. One thing that I have talked to Andrew about and we've gone back and forth is one of the key ways to spot something is you can't have a philosophy anymore of let's just set the firewall up or set the UTM device up and just forget it. That's not the mentality of which, 2024 is going to hold for us. We should get rid of that mentality, because in order to have a secure foundation in the universal threat management, you have to be on top of everything, and you have to communicate with your clients, with your partners, things of those sorts. So the set it and forget it mentality is not something that's going to work if you're looking for these top security threats. So that's one of the key things that we wanted to bring out before we even started the webinar. So I wanted to get you all geared up for that process. In my opinion, when you're talking about the top security threats and challenges, you got to stay engaged with your clients. You got to stay engaged with everybody. Those are the key focus for every MSP that's out there. I personally try to contact my clients at least once every 3 or 4 weeks. And what I've noticed is when I do contact my clients, they're like, hey, I have this issue, I have that issue. And it's things that didn't come up. So in engaging people and being a part of that process, now you find out other things that can help you in your journey and keeping them safe. Like, oh, we got a new computer and no one told you, which happens to all of the MSPs probably that's on the line now. So now you have to set them up and make sure that they are secure through that process.
So as we continue to wait for Andrew to come on, I'm just going to basically go over the quick agenda that we got going on. Now, as I said before, this is a little bit different. So it's open-ended with all the questions you can put in there. If you want to hear about a certain topic or anything like that, it's definitely something we would encourage. So we do have interactive polls to, as we see here, set the stage. And we will have 2 Q&A sessions depending on what the topics are. We can go ahead and keep going with that. Give me 1 second. Let me just see about Andrew.
And while we're doing a lot of the things that we're doing in the interactive polls, the Q&A sessions, as Joseph said, this is pretty much a high level. Our main focus for doing this was to make sure that we can try and engage with our partners, engage with new clients or potential people that we can interact with, and find out what you all want to focus on, or what will be your top focus in terms of security, in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of anything like that. So once we get the main focus of what you want, then we want to set up different sessions to address those needs that you have.
Now, right now, I'm going to open up this for a poll. If you're able to, on whatever device you are on, what do you think that the most concern you have for a small business in aspect to cybersecurity? Well, we just got there.
And while the poll's going, one thing that I did notice when I looked at the poll a little earlier is, for me, I could break these features up into different sections and different categories. So I have pretty much a preventive measures for cybersecurity or reactive measures for cybersecurity in my mind. So ransomware, data breaches, those would be reactive. When they happen, you have to react to something. The preventive measures would be compliance for me, training, insider threats, knowing who you hired, things of those. Those are pretty much preventive measures for not getting into a situation where you could have a phishing attack or ransomware or data breach. So in looking at my polls, I've pretty much broken my polls up into those two sections as we go.
Okay. Okay, as I get the information, we're collecting responses. Very good. Thank you for your engagement. I appreciate that. Okay.
We're just going to wait a couple more seconds for you guys to fill us out and have the opportunity to fill us out, maybe another 15 seconds.
Okay, Andrew, you should be ready to go.
Okay.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Great.
Thank you. Apologies for the little bit of a delay we had going on there.
Yeah, I apologize as well.
Real quick, this is Andrew Baker. He is the head of Brainwave Consulting. He has expertise in all the intricate needs of his clients, from anti-malware protection to remote servers, VoIP. He definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to IT for small business. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself?
Thanks, Joseph. I would say that I did corporate IT for small and large organizations, multinationals, and some tiny corps for about 2 decades. And then I got into targeting smaller businesses that needed support because they don't have resources. And security has been my primary focus, even though I do IT operations, cloud, and all that other stuff. So this is a very interesting discussion for me, and I really like to have these talks to help people out.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And so I would close the poll right now. I'll go over the information at the end. We're going to have another poll there, and we can see what everyone is worried about when it comes to cybersecurity. Let me jump back to where I was before, which was the overview. So we're focused on this. Oh, wrong one. We focus on small business from our aspects, and we've broken this up into 6 different pillars: the importance, the real world impacts, common issues, what challenges they have, human error, and regulatory. Now we could jump right into each one of these, but I wanted to highlight the first one here, which will be the importance of cybersecurity. I kind of think that the biggest one is downtime. If the company is not working, if the business isn't running, you lose money every single hour that you have no connectivity, and that's one of the most important things. That either the network goes down or anything like that, or you have to do some kind of incident response or something. But the cost of downtime always ticks away, and we have a report here from ITIC who just recently put a survey for the hourly cost of downtime. We thank them for giving us the support. This is part one. This will explain like all the different aspects of what is affected by downtime, and then part two is coming of the real world cost of this, depending on what the industry that you're in. This is available for download for free from this slide here. We'll supply the slide deck, but also if you go to calyptix.com and go to the Learning Center, this is the most recent post on there. And we'll also have that in our partner portal. Now, we're just going to briefly go over this of the real world impacts. I'm not going to go into every single thing that's happened over the last few months, but there is many different places that can impact a small business, even if it's not directly to the business. Ransomware, malware, we all kind of know where that comes from usually from social aspects, email, and all that, data breaches, direct attacks, DDoS, phishing, social engineering, and sector specific, which would be like healthcare, finances, and all that. Have you guys seen anything that's been like similar in your workings? Like, what was the last thing that you actually would think that like brought anyone down or cost them?
So for me, I've seen a lot of downtime. Actually, I was at a dentist's office last week, and there was ransomware put on their system. I did not run their system, but since they knew I was an IT guy, they called me in a panic, and he was just like, should I pay or and my main questions were, well, how is all of your systems backed up? Do they have access to your backups? Do they have? And he's like, I'm not quite sure. I got to talk to my IT guy. Yeah. As a owner of a company, I think it's important that the real world disaster recovery procedure that your IT company should put out. For me, that was a major wake up call, because that was the first time that I have dealt with like head on someone calling me for ransomware. Malware is always there. Data breaches is always there. We've had calls for that. I found out that one of the main DDoS attacks that they have out there is on Amazon. So Andrew, I got to ask you, do you think honestly that there are more people trying to prevent hackers or more hackers? I'm just putting it out there.
Oh, there are absolutely more hackers, and it's because there's more direct revenue from hacking, right? So you think about all of the companies that are involved in protection and defense and so forth. There are more individuals, and there's a whole massive ecosystem. Like the dark web is all about an ecosystem of attacking and breaches.
Wow. So, I mean, with that knowledge, I would think, yeah, if I'm looking for bad things, I can look on the dark web. But I just happen to notice that one of the major DDoS attacks that you guys might know about, some of you might know and might not know, is on Amazon. Like they have an actual device called the USB killer. And the USB killer they're selling on Amazon, like regular Amazon. And all this device, you plug it into any USB drive and it destroys the device itself. So whether you're plugging into USB of a TV that you randomly walk by, or you hook up a USB drive to a phone and you just happen to leave your phone away, it's on Amazon. It's out there and it's not even hidden anymore. It's like in the open. So I agree with Andrew. Like there are far more hackers. And I think as a company like Calyptix, like other companies that are like us, we need to work together. They work together. So I think it's important for us to work together as well to try and stop them as a group, as a whole. And that's one of my main focuses, because if we can teach people, teach clients, teach customers what to look for, it should not matter if you're a Calyptix client or not. I just want everybody to be safe. That's my theory.
Well, the challenge is that they have more of an incentive to work together because they're all trying to get money. Whereas in our ecosystem, people have differing motivations.
Okay. Now, wanted to touch upon the vulnerabilities that they have. Most of you already know about these kinds of things. Weak passwords. That's like the tail, the oldest tale right there. Some companies do a password rotation or something like that with the company name 1, 2, 24, or whatever. And, you know, that doesn't take much to social engineer out, really. Once you get something, you kind of can go from there. As for outdated software, we try to update our software, but not every vendor does that. And what I'm actually seeing from the polls and everything, lack of training is probably like the biggest thing that we got going on.
So it's funny that we talk about weak passwords and lack of training. All of these. So Joseph brought up when he first started, he said, hey, downtime is the most crucial thing ever. And to me, downtime is money. If by some chance I'm the owner of a company and I have downtime, that means I'm paying people to sit around and do nothing, which is very, very bad. I'll give you. So I think for me, everything is all about keeping people up so that we can be efficient, so that we can work. I just had a scenario and I thought that downtime would be the most, that money would be the most crucial factor of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, but it's part of it. Like I'll give you an example. So for me, last week we had prayer meeting and we gave access to our prayer meeting to the person who was hosting. Well, somebody hacked his computer. They didn't hack our site. They hacked his computer and they put up a lot of bad things while we were having prayer meeting. So I think things like that are, you know, because he had a weak password, as I looked at his system, it wasn't secure at all, like his system. But we trusted, without knowing him, we gave him access to admin rights of our Zoom account, which is like a third party that we actually did. So it's also important to know when you are giving access to a third party vendor, are they secure as well? So that's one of the things in training that I am picking up as something I need to do when I'm vetting people for this process or any other process. Anything, Andrew, on this?
Yeah, people don't understand risk, right? They tend to view risk in terms of what would I do with the information, right? So if you say to somebody, hey, you need to secure your personal account on your home computer. And they're like, why? I'm not doing anything with it. It's like, no, the issue isn't whether or not you're doing anything with it. It's whether or not an attacker could do something with it, whether or not they could infiltrate your system and use your system as the source of subsequent attacks so it doesn't trace back to them, right? Mm-hmm. So people don't realize if somebody infiltrates your machine and puts child pornography on your machine, and that gets filtered, you're going to be in a lot of trouble trying to explain how you didn't do that. So you need to understand that those risks are legitimate and find ways to protect against
them. Andrew, could you turn up your mic or keep your mic a little closer? We're kind of having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So another thing, I just have to ask, and this could have been a poll. We could have did a poll for this, but we talk about weak passwords. We talk about outdated software. One thing that I have found as an administrator that I used to do is I never considered myself a user. And so as me not considering myself a user, I never changed my password. As the admin, I had my strong password. I kept it there. But we also started to learn that that's bad practice as well. You go into a site and you make a super user, as they used to be called, and you don't change the password or rotate the password of the super user because you're like, hey, I'm secure, I have my stuff. One of the vulnerabilities is thinking that you're not a regular user, I think. And that's one of the poor things that we do in networking that I hope we're not doing anymore, but it's something that was practiced when I was back in the 90s, I would say, where I would just make a super password and I would just keep it. But those get hacked as well. And now you have access to more information because you think that you are not a regular typical user that can get hacked as well. So that's something that we need to be mindful of.
Absolutely. Operational security is good, and it's more important that those of us who understand the need for it do better at doing it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm moving on to the challenges. Well, why aren't these things put into place? What we pretty much crunched everything down was limited budget, limited expertise, and limited technological assets. Do you guys experience this as well? Do you feel it's kind of the same thing?
So I think it starts.
What's your top on this one, Andrew?
I would say it starts with expertise limitations. And there are two sides of that. That's not having someone on staff that understands it and not having an appreciation for it so that you don't get someone on staff, right? So if you understand as a business owner that security is important, you're going to make every effort to get the right people in place to help you, because you're not going to allocate a budget to something you don't understand or don't believe is an issue. You're not going to obtain the right technology for something you don't understand. So you need to have an understanding and an appreciation for it and have access to resources, to expertise. And then the rest of the things are easier to address.
For me, I agree. I've always worked with a limited budget. So in working with a limited budget, I've always relied on not my general expertise at anything. I team with a lot of people. I think it's very, very important that we as professionals, we are in different Reddit groups, chat groups. We know exactly what to do and who to talk to about being secure. So I've teamed with a lot of IT people because I didn't have a huge budget for working with security, but I knew people who did. So they would recommend things and I would run my security program. I would run my checklist by them. And they would say, hey, you could do this, or there's a new product out there that you can use. So I didn't have a huge budget. My expertise wasn't that good. My technological shortcomings, I relied on other people to assist me. And then as I grew, I made sure that I was an arm when other people came so that I can say, hey, it might be good to do this. So I always team with people when you don't have a huge budget or your expertise. There are a lot of people out here that are very knowledgeable. Like I'll tell everybody at Calyptix, I am a front face of really smart people. Like the guys that I work with are on a different level in terms of security, networking, programming, and I learn a lot from them. And from that, I can take it back to our partners, our clients, to give them the full access of what Calyptix has to offer. So I think having a team instead of you trying to always figure it out yourself may be a better way to handle these shortcomings for me.
Absolutely.
Moving on, the human error aspect. We were talking about social engineering and all that. I mean, but it also has to do with like improper configurations or changing something in the field or something like that. But what they say here is like, I mean, you guys aren't surprised by this, but they're saying 90% of most breaches happen because of human error. What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely correct. I think that's 100%. I think human error is probably, and when I say human error, I'm not talking about you missed just a comma or you didn't put a semicolon at the end of your code, things like that. It could be just unintentional neglect. I left my papers up on my desk where the policy says you're supposed to put them in a drawer after you're finished with them. Things like that are there. And I think that 90% of the issues that we're having is because it's human error. And I think that's an accurate statement. Andrew, your thoughts?
Absolutely. And 90% is probably being generous. I mean, think about it. An attacker trying to get into your network is either going to leverage an undisclosed breach, right? An undisclosed vulnerability, rather, right? Or one that was disclosed and you didn't fix, configuration mistake, social engineering. Like if you list all of the ways that people can get into your network, just that statistic, you'll find that if they're either leveraging something you couldn't have known and didn't have a means against in a very small percentage of cases, or something that someone or some sets of persons did not do adequately.
I agree. I also think that this is where phishing emails, it's very important for us as as professionals to educate our clients about phishing emails. Everybody sees them every day. Everybody sees them, but sometimes our phishing emails are seasonal. Prime example, we have at Calyptix a bunch of tax clients. They see a lot more phishing emails between January and April. So we see a lot more UPS phishing emails during the holidays. Some things are seasonal. Some things are dependent on the schedule of everything that's going on. So it's very, very important for us to mitigate that by teaching our clients what to do. And this is the learning that we have to do. Like prime example for me, what I did at my schools, at the places where I've taught is, first I tell them, ask yourself the question, did you want that? Or did you have a package out there? Do you even use UPS? That's the first thing. Do you even use it? No, but they sent me a message. If you don't use it and they send you a message, that should be a red flag. Then I said, oh, well, another thing you can do. And I told them, hey, when you check the from field of a message, and it says it's from UPS, but the UPS has a .pl after it or a .tw after it, that should bring a red flag that UPS doesn't use those in the United States. They don't. So there are certain things that I have to teach people. And I think that's part of the main thing that I try to do is the learning process of my clients. When they start to evolve and get better, then I think the human error goes away or gets less. So what Andrew said, I think being 90% is generous. I think with us teaching and giving that information away, it can be around 90%.
Yeah.
Or less. The thing I would point out too, training users is good. I've done since 2014, I've used a lot of different products that help users understand about threats. But the real thing that takes you over the hump is making it easy for them to act on their suspicions. Because what happens is if you train them and they get suspicious, but the method that they have for bypassing it is difficult, they will default to easy mode. If you make it that they can just look at an email, think, this is kind of sketchy, press a button that alerts somebody and move on their way, they will be way more alert and attentive because the effort they have to put in after the impression they get is minimal. And so really you have to bundle training with technology so that it's easier for them. They still have to exert some brain power, but as long as you make it so they don't have to become you to determine whether or not it's safe, it's going to be a lot better for everybody.
Agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
And moving on, regulatory compliance. Now, we've heard rumors and stuff like that from, not really rumors, but just some real world applications when it comes to this. Not everyone is beholden to this, but we see it's starting to be a little more prevalent with insurance and everything like that being on the line, forcing MSPs as well as their businesses to be compliant in these regulations. Have you guys seen this in the field at all?
Absolutely. This is becoming more of an issue for small companies, or either the small companies directly or the bigger partners of small companies who then push those requirements down to the smaller company. And there's good and bad to this. One of the early discussions we had at the beginning of this century was the issue of, hey, compliance, people, is just a checklist. It's not operational security. People are doing the bare minimum. And I kind of get that. I kind of get that there's a difference between security and compliance in terms of your objective and how you're going to look at it. But I also realize that some people will never make the effort unless there's a stick involved someplace.
Agree. Yes.
For them. So I find that having that stick means that I can get operational security into an environment because they have that pressure of compliance where they won't be able to get business if they don't at least adhere to the letter of the law, if not the spirit.
Yep. I've run into compliance a lot. The one thing that I've found, even with some of our partners, some with my other clients that I've worked for before, is they don't look for the requirements until they're told to, like Andrew just said. I think as professionals, we should look at this stuff on our downtime. The CMMC or the cyber management. You should look at these ahead of time, just in case you have to run into them. I found out, working in HIPAA, I did work at a hospital where we went through the HIPAA compliance, and we had to get certified to be a HIPAA compliant hospital. But before then, I would have never even looked at it. I think as a professional, as a business, we should look at these things before and get familiar with them before it's somebody handed me a piece of paper. Can we finish the checklist, so that we can familiarize with HIPAA, ISA, CMMC, things like that. I think those are very, very important. Now, for me personally, cyber insurance, I think it's very important that companies have cyber insurance. I think it's a necessity that most companies should have. I don't think it should be a crutch for us not to do the work. So some professionals, MSPs, should say, hey, well, I have cybersecurity, so now I don't have to patch everything. So if something goes wrong, I could just put it back on the cyber insurance. I don't think that's the reason it was created. I don't think that's a good method of having, I don't have to patch my stuff because I have insurance now. I think it shouldn't be a crutch. It should be something that you have as a necessity, because I think it's very, very important, but you should still stay up on your patching, educating your clients, things of those sorts. So I've seen cyber insurance become, to some people, a crutch where now they don't have to do work anymore. So I think educating and staying up on these and making sure that you stay up on everything that you have is more important than just having cyber insurance or just checking the boxes on HIPAA, things like that.
2 quick points on that. Cyber insurance, the insurance companies, having experienced a lot of loss in 2020 and 21, they have been enforcing regulations, which was surprising. I did not anticipate that before, but it's actually encouraging to see. So it's going to be harder for people to slack off that way. The other thing that I would say in terms of compliance, when compliance comes on your radar, I know that businesses are generally going to try to do whatever's the least they can get away with doing because of the effort. But security professionals should look not just to understand the basis of the compliance, but it is easier to put a compliance framework in place that covers all of your bases, because what you don't want to do is to be need to be HIPAA compliant and PCI and only do one of them. And then now you have to go through the whole process again the second time. What you should do is, once compliance comes on your radar, if not before, look at what would be entailed in all of the ones that make sense for you and might have an impact from customers pushing you on it, and cover and implement something that covers both at the same time, so you don't have to really revisit it the second time.
And I think most Canadian and most
EU.
US or UK, I think EU are going with the CMMC. So I think it's definitely something that we should put on our radar, because in order to do government funding or things like that, you will have to be CMMC certified. So if you're looking in that field, you know, during your downtime, you might want to just look at the website of where all of that data is. And you've probably done a lot if you've had the HIPAA or PCI. So it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just knowing what parts to put in this as well.
Well,
I do want to comment. Ken in the chat here does quarterly cyber reviews, which is really nice. I like that. As well as what he says is cyber insurance has forced many of their customers to allow them to take them to the next level of security. I love that pass right there.
And I think I think one of the great things that Ken just said is he had a plan. And I think as a business professional, you have to have a plan. So if you're doing quarterly, if you're doing monthly, you have a plan written down of your structure, and your clients are aware of your structure and trying to keep them safe. And I think as long as you're engaging with them, that's a great thing. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. Just moving on. So right here, we got like the top 10 cybersecurity threats. We briefly went over it in the earlier slide. This is just to reiterate of what these threats are. And next, we're actually going to, have a brief of how to spot them, what systems to use, and everything like that. I'm going to pair this with a question that we have in the chat here, Laura. What is your recommendation on how small businesses and remote branch offices with no on-site IT can spot a hack, data breaches that doesn't obviously crash the system or network or immediately start causing problems? What should they be looking for? I mean, like, what kind of system would they be using to see any of these anomalies or anything like that?
I'm glad you used the word anomaly.
So for me, it depends on if the client is part of a global. I'll give you an example. So let's say you're at a medical facility and you are a partner that was just acquired, but you're bigger. Let's use, since they no longer exist and they're part of something else, let's use Atrium Health. So if you're part of Atrium Health and then you are a small business that's a small doctor's office that just got acquired, Atrium Health has its own IT security. However, they're not necessarily going to go to your office every day and set up and make sure and maintain that you are there. So for me, as a small business, it is important that I have my own IT person at least look at on a quarterly basis. And I'm not saying that you have to hire a in-house staff, but you at least need people to come in and assess what you have and make sure that you are at the level of which you are. So I think that that's one of the key things that I would start with. And then I'll let Andrew go with a couple more.
So what I'll say is monitoring is the most important of the security disciplines that you need to implement. It's the one that can cost the least in many ways. And it's the one that even if you don't have sufficient bandwidth or resources to, and I'm talking people bandwidth, to investigate things in real time and do real-time alerting, the forensics capabilities alone will be beneficial to you. So if you've got a firewall in a remote place, all of the modern firewalls that call themselves next generation firewalls, they will all track some of the more common issues. They will all flag some of the most common issues or block them. You put those things in place, right? You put those in your environment and you allow logging, syslog, something, you allow that information to be logged somewhere else that you can put a body on it. You can have someone look at it periodically, review weekly, whatever the case is. And as you do that, you'll get a better understanding of what's normal and what's abnormal for your environment. And that will give you a leg up in being able to prioritize what to do to remediate or to prevent.
I agree. I also think that in environments where you have remote sites, things of that sort, don't be afraid of the anomalies. Don't be afraid to make people aware of the anomalies. Like if by some chance, you know, for a fact, every day you shut off your machine, but you come in and all the machines are on, somebody needs to be alerted. That's an alert, because I know for a fact I shut my machine down every day. When I come in this one day and all the machines are on, that's something that needs to be alerted. Don't be afraid to alert people from systems like that, is my thought process as well.
So I'm going to jump into questions. If there's more comments, anything else? So Ken actually says that they use LionGuard to notify them for changes in monitored systems.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
So one thing that I have noticed is a lot of these smaller businesses, not only without information, that a lot of information that they don't have, but they also don't even know the questions to ask. So I think putting people in environments where they can learn to ask the questions. So, you know, for us knowing syslog, and a lot of people think that they know IT, but you ask them, hey, do you have a syslog server? And they're like, what's that? Then you're saying, okay, well, you don't even do logging at all, because you would at least know what a syslog server is. Not that you ran one, but you would know what it is. So I think it's very, very important that we educate as much as we can, even in small businesses or businesses that are out there. Any more comments?
Logging is key.
Please put in the Q&A what tool mentioned for monitoring that you just mentioned. LionGuard. That's what Ken said that they use.
Yeah, I can't overestimate the effect of logging. It's the cheapest thing you can do. It's the first thing I do when I drop into an environment to help someone, or start, you know, during my career when I started a new employment. First thing I do before I ask too many questions, let me get the objective truth from the logs.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand where you're going and what's happening, how long things have been occurring. Think of how many times you've seen a breach notification and there's all of this ambiguity about when it started, when the issue began, how long people have been in the environment. That's because there's inadequate logging.
Mm-hmm.
Look, and Ken has a comment saying syslog is great, but it's time consuming.
Yes. We used to use a program called Nagios, and it was a Unix-based system that did a whole bunch of monitoring and logging. That's one of the systems that I did use back when I was looking at a whole bunch of logs. One thing that I do thank the developers for is in support in which I work, since I pretty much help out all of the partners that we have. They've put a lot of logging in place so that I can go back and review what's going on, pretty much like Andrew said, and diagnose not necessarily what you told me, but what does the data say that what happened? Not necessarily the time periods that you told me. Oh, I did this at this time. I did that. The data says that you weren't even in the system until 11 o'clock. So, oh, yeah. That's when I logged in. And so there's a lot of discrepancy when dealing with clients. So, but the logging doesn't fib at all. So I think it's very, very important, like you say.
Yeah, log management is critical, and it's time consuming. It is, but there's no better way.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, going to launch another poll. Which area of cybersecurity do you believe small business need to focus on improving most urgently? So here we go.
And the word urgently is like, of all of them, which one is the most urgent?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm biased because I work in support.
Mm-hmm.
So mine is always going to be employee awareness and training. I'm biased. However,
so one of the things I wanted to mention when Joseph had started at the beginning, it's not just downtime that's a problem. That is a general problem, absolutely, because during downtime, you're not going to get any work. But the difference between a non-security incident and a security incident, you know, if there's something that breaks your connectivity, if there's something that knocks over your server, when you figure out what it is, you get that machine back up, you're back in business. But a security incident may leave long-term ramifications that require response. And so for me, business needs to develop an incident response plan, because that's one of the few things that you really need to have in advance, or it's not going to be effective in the moment.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, so close out that poll. We'll go over in a second. Moving on. So really building resilience. I mean, I'm not going to go over the exact numbers, but I would say that the first everyone's talking about is employee awareness and training. And this is where it's at. That's why we got this slide here. Robust incident response plan. You need to know how to escape the fire when it's happening. Do you go out the window? What do you do? What is the procedure for what happens? How do you lock everything down? Those kinds of things. But making them aware of the potential risk of, phishing emails and any kind of like questions, even how benign they may seem in a phone call. It might just be gathering that one little piece of information. You guys want to build upon that at all?
I think you said it spot on. I mean, what Andrew said about incident response plan, I think plans like disaster recovery plans, incident response plans, things like that are in place to start make your life so easy. So, I did work in DC during 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, I never thought I would have to use ever that plan that was there in place. But it's weird. I had to actually find it. I dug it up. It was under a whole bunch of papers, but I found it and I was able to follow it to the letter to make sure that my company was safe, because we were a defense contractor. And during those, we had an incident response plan already put in place. So it was very, very crucial for me to have one, because I was newer at security. I was more of a, hey, I know how to make a Windows machine work or a Windows server, but I wasn't in the security plan. So having that in place was very, very beneficial.
Absolutely. In 2012, I was working in an organization during Superstorm Sandy, where the organization was based, the data center for our org was based out of New Jersey. And we had a West Coast data center as a secondary. And we had to fail over because we weren't sure what would happen on the East Coast. And so here we had to implement this massive plan that we had tested a few times partially, but had never done before, which was to flip the base of our operations to primary West Coast. And there were some bumps along the way, because even though you try and plan everything, there are things that you leave out, things you didn't think were important, things that changed since you did the plan, but it was significant. It was very helpful. So it worked.
Yeah. Ken wants to add offsite backup and backup encryption to that list. That's great stuff.
Yes. Right there. Backup encryption is good when you're the one doing it.
When you're the one doing it?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't let your adversary encrypt your backup.
Right. Yeah. They just,
that's something that we were planning to build that in. A lot of people before offsite backups, they were doing backups over the VPN client. So we were trying to put in place a system that will kick on a VPN and then destroy a VPN after it was done backing up. Because if you get ransomware and then it encrypts over the IPsec tunnel, then it's useless. Your backups are useless. So making sure that you're encrypting them, like you said, is a good thing and not someone else.
And also make sure that you have snapshots in place. And when I say snapshots, any technology that will ensure multiple backups, because you might not catch it in time, right? And the first backup that you notice might be the corrupted one. You don't want that to be the only backup.
Agree.
Okay. Now I'm just going to move on to it. I'm just throwing this out there, multi-factor authentication. It's something you can add security to the general password, username passwords. I would say do this on every single thing that you can. This is one of those easy things. I know it's like we sacrifice convenience for security at times, but when you held the keys to the kingdom, it's your obligation to put as much security on your access as possible.
And before we move on from this slide, it's very important that you back up your authenticator.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a lot of people forget that, oh, I have everything in my phone. And then my phone got so wet I can't get to anything. So it's very important that you back up your authenticator as well, because that's the one that holds the keys to the castle. So if you lose that, now you have to go through the whole process of setting up some things, and you might not have access to others as well.
Yep.
I'm not speaking from experience.
Yeah.
But I put that out there.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I've generally just put this here: tools and resources to strengthen your cybersecurity posture. I really just had EDR because we make firewalls and we don't really touch the end point at all. So that's kind of like where we see like a lack of visibility or anything like that. But do you use like plenty of EDRs, Andrew?
Oh, definitely. Products like Cyland, Sentinel One. I've used a ton of products over the years. At the end of the day, the closer you can put the security to where the data resides or where the system resides, the better, right? So there's always going to be perimeter-ish security, and there's always going to be endpoint security, and defense in depth is still a thing.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with EDRs systems, but one thing, even today, like a client called and I had to walk them through. If you don't know in the task manager, there's a resource monitor. That resource monitor tells exactly what's going on your machine, like right now. It'll tell you which programs are in the networking tab. It'll tell you which programs are going to what IPs or what ports. So even if you don't have a standard EDR system, I would encourage you to at least look at the task manager and look at the resource monitor in there and check out the networking tab. It can tell you a lot of information that's going on right now. In terms of what happened 10 minutes ago, it won't do that, but it'll give you insight and information to help you if you're starting off trying to figure out what an EDR will do for you. Thank you.
All right.
Moving on to what we do. Firewalls. And so we have a basic here rundown of the different things that would help you with your security posture as it pertains to the endpoints, or the firewall. You want to just quick?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief rundown. I'm not going to read everything here, but what our universal threat management system does, or our basic Calyptix firewall, as we call it. For security reasons, we've created a virtual private networks that you can connect back into, whether they're IPsec tunnels or they're user to device tunnels for your security. We've also created Gatekeeper, which is not on the list here, but it's something that we encourage you to use because it builds a secure tunnel from any device anywhere back into your network. We protect your network with our intrusion detection prevention system that we have here. One of the key things outside of IDS, IPS that we help with is what we call our geofence. Geofence is basically you can set up very, very easy who can contact you or who can contact your systems behind you. So we, segregation, DNS filtering, all of those we do, monitoring, logging, giving you information. But we have some very proprietary things that we do at Calyptix that will help you in your process of becoming a very, very secure universal threat management system. And that's our basic goal, is to make you as a partner, as a client, as safe as you possibly can. That's an overview. I did say other things like that because once you review all of these and you're reading back, you can read all of the different things that are on the slides. But to come to mind, those are the things. One of the key founding things that our owner, he came up with was a way for our boxes to learn from each other and then have that information protect you. So we created the Community Shield. Our Community Shield is basically a system that learns from other access enforcers that we have out there. When someone's trying to hack one, it reports back to all of us and it says this IP address is bad or this place is bad. And now everybody's protected from that. So it's different things like that that we put in to our system to try to assist you in becoming a great, great, great company that is protected by a very, very resilient firewall.
And one of the things I'd like to mention, you had said it early on, Duane, but it's important when you have tools, right, that you use them, that you leverage the functionality of the tools. Security is not the kind of discipline where just having a tool that has 50 features means that you're leveraging 50 features. And if you don't leverage it, it's not going to be that effective for you. Many people will be broken into while they own the tools that were capable, but they were not configured to do anything useful.
And that's actually a great point. Like for me, Andrew, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I've logged into a lot of people's access enforcers and they're running the default configuration that we put out there. So I think it's very, very important that you review and make sure that you are as secure as possible. That would be the most thing that I would say in terms of our access enforcers, in terms of our threat management devices.
All right. Just read off a couple of questions, comments that we got going on here. I wanted to highlight Don Brown said that his MSP cyber insurance agent advisor says never to use the words like compromised, breached, or hacks. It's always an event until the forensic team says otherwise. I understand that because language is important. And
fair enough.
And once you say one thing, it could bring you open up a whole can of worms. If you say there's a breach, then there's legal ramifications or legal processes for that kind of thing. And since if there's an incident response plan or something like that, or disclosure of any kind of a breach, those things need to be followed through to a T. So I think that's great advice, saying everything is an event until you can know exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great comment.
Very true.
Thanks, Don.
Ken says like his network is NAS willing only accept logins from the backup software and no saved access passwords, and the shares are hidden. Very nice. That's a good way to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, and Ken brought up a good point. If you can lock it down, lock it down. And that's something that I've always been taught. If you can lock it down, lock it down. If you can just only give read access to people, just give read access until they need it. It's a small thing. Like I'll give you an example. This webinar that we're on now, we've gathered a lot of information without giving you access. Joseph was nice enough to do 2 polls. We've gathered the information, but did not give you access to the webinar. It's things like that we think are very, very important because we're getting information, but we don't have to necessarily give you access to the webinar to potentially be a risk, I should say.
Least privilege is a thing. It's an important thing. If you can clearly identify what people are supposed to do and limit them to that, then mistakes, compromise, them being undermined, them being impersonated, all of those things are minimized in terms of their risk.
Yeah. So we have one question Laura asks. What's your recommendation on how often small businesses and mid-sized companies should perform a thorough network vulnerability assessment? And do you recommend a third party should be brought in for that vulnerability testing?
I would say that the very first time you do it, it should definitely be a third party. And based on what you learn, you would either partner with someone who's going to do that for you on a good basis, or you're going to hire someone who's going to do that internally. Internal tests, internal scans and assessments should be at least quarterly, and external can be annual, depends on your business risk, but annual would be the least frequently that I would do it. But yeah, definitely get someone to do it first so you understand what the expectations are. Because if you do it yourself, you think you did a great job and you didn't, how would you know?
Right. And this is where I think partnering with other people is very, very important, because you might not have the resources or the finances to hire someone to do it. The first thing I would do is I would have someone, another company that is another IT company, come in and assess. The reason I do that is because they can give me pointers, and then I can hire an outside third party, because the first time that I spend money, I want to make sure that my money is well spent. So if I have a whole list of things, I can take care of a lot of that with some of the people that I know beforehand, personally.
Okay. Here's a real world question right now. Keith Hubbard,
Virginia
has a neighbor whom is using a camera detector and a Wi-Fi jammer to trespass on my property.
Yes.
Without sniffing packets, how do I log it? That's an interesting question.
Without sniffing packets, I would sniff packets.
A jammer.
Yeah. So Kali Linux has this ability to use a Wi-Fi jammer to get your password. It's called a data prevention process, where they teach you how to do things, but it's basically somebody's trying to hack you. The first thing I would do is I would log it. The first thing in a system like this, you would have logging on your, and I would make a note of every single time that it happens. As far as trying to mitigate it, from a Wi-Fi jammer, I've never mitigated that.
Yeah, I have to think about that.
Yeah, I have to think about that, because I've never mitigated a Wi-Fi jammer. I've seen how they work.
Well, like a flipper?
Like a flipper, or like a lot of people use, there are two to three programs that you can use on the Kali Linux to actually see people doing it.
Gotcha.
And I've seen it done. However, I've never mitigated it. I would log it definitely. And then from that whole IP scheme, like I do a whole bunch of packet captures from that whole IP scheme. I block everybody coming into my system, because my Wi-Fi should be behind my Calyptix device, or my universal threat management device. So I block everybody that's from that whole network trying to come in.
That's a good question. So this is Wi-Fi cameras, or they're trying to get into the network directly? They're trying to brute force their way into the Wi-Fi network.
What was the question again? Say the question one more time.
Oh, this one?
The Keith Hubbard.
Without sniffing packets, how do you log it? That's really just it.
Okay. Because I was trying to determine if it was an issue of, hey, I have Wi-Fi cameras out there and they're trying to block it so they can get onto my property while I can't have any visibility because they're blocking my cameras from having access. Or if they're trying to essentially do some sort of a DOS attack against my Wi-Fi so they can get into my network.
Yeah, I think they're just pulling the wool over their eyes. And
okay. If it's a visibility situation, get one wired camera out there.
Yeah.
I get it. Just have one wired one and other wireless ones. It can be difficult, but fiber will be your best bet because you don't have distance concerns with single mode fiber. And do that. And if it's in terms of your Wi-Fi access, sticks the multi-factor on there, or some sort of a challenge response, because then they won't be able to get in.
Right.
Agree.
Yeah, camera's really far out, so yeah. But I'm gonna have to keep going and wrap this up. We had done the polls and everything like that. So I'm going to share what we had going on. And so the first poll, phishing and attacks and ransomware, came out as 87%, which is not surprising. It's the same thing. It's the people factor, seems like, when it comes down to it.
Sure.
Well, because ransomware is going to destroy your business more than the other thing.
Good point.
Insider threat is going to be a little bit of a problem till you get rid of that person. But phishing attacks, you could be down for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey. Now, the second question, what areas of cybersecurity do you believe they need to focus on most urgently? And it's just straight up. employee awareness and training. So to mitigate those same things, social engineering, ransomware kind of risks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we have a resounding answer of what people are worried about.
So from the polls that we have, our goal was to try and put out a webinar so that we can try and get a feel for what you guys would be interested in talking about and trying to figure out best ways to mitigate situations. So our goal and our feedback that you guys gave, and we thank you for the feedback, but it's mostly so that when we prepare our webinars, we'll prepare them geared towards what you really, really want to know. And that's why we did this.
Right. And so we'd like to thank you for being here today. There is a survey for anything new topics of what you would like to hear about in the future. We would like to do more of these. And if you're also wanting to participate in these yourself. Andrew, thank you very much for being here today.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
Greatly.
Yeah.
And Duane,
definitely thank you, Andrew, for coming in. Cybersecurity is a very, very good topic to talk about, and we had one of the security experts on the line. So I really want to thank you again, Andrew, for coming through and shedding your knowledge to us and our partners and potential people that we want to talk to in the future.
All right.
Very welcome.
If anyone needs a recording of this, it'll be inside the partner portal and also on our YouTube page. But until then,
thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.